Hello and welcome to another edition of MEMA OE Supplier Insights. I'm Mike Jackson, Executive Director of Strategy and Research at MEMA. Very pleased to have Jocelyn Mayfield, Principal, Deloitte Consulting, Automotive and Manufacturing, here with us today to discuss the barometer on talent and HR. Jocelyn, great to have you here, and thanks so much for joining me. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely, Mike. Thank you so much for including me in the discussion today. As you shared, my name is Jocelyn Mayfield. I am an 18-year veteran of consulting, but focused all of that time in supply chain, manufacturing, and really the last 11 years exclusively in automotive. My focus, as you alluded to, Mike, is mostly in how do we think about workforce and how do we think about the impacts of external and internal pressures and disruption on what that means for access to talent, skills, and really making sure people come along the journey with many of these large automotive organizations into what ultimately is meant to be their future success and focus on mobility. So really excited to react to some of the data here today with you.
I really appreciate it. Sounds like we have the perfect person to the expert, subject matter expert to walk us through our findings. And so thank you for that. We look at our supplier barometer index. What is maybe not a big surprise. This is our typical, we ask our members, our 12-month outlook, and how has it changed over the last 3 months? Are they more optimistic or pessimistic? In this case, there's still pessimism, a lot of pessimism, although it maybe not as pessimistic as the second quarter. Second quarter was at 32. So we're a little bit better at 39, so 7-point improvement, but we're still 11 points negative. And this is the 14th consecutive quarter of building pessimism. Are you seeing the same type of kind of mindset? And I think our members are a bit just tired. It's an ongoing and constant battle, if you will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm seeing that as well. So I think there's so much uncertainty, it creates a lot of swirl. And so where these automotive organizations have historically experienced a lot of disruption, certainly, but had a pretty good idea of how to focus energy, effort, and prioritization. I think now is a lot of what will today bring? What will tomorrow bring? It's a lot more near term disruption that's creating a need for faster reaction times, where this is an industry that's traditionally enjoyed and really relied upon a bit more time in their planning life cycle to be able to be adaptable. So that agility is really becoming a huge piece of strategy, but it also is very tiring. And these organizations are learning it on the fly. So not at all surprised to see this, Mike. I think it's absolutely in line with the conversations I've been having in the industry.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. We ask our members about their threats. What are the top threats to the industry over the next 12 months? And it's probably not a big surprise either here that the greatest threat is changes in government trade policy. And so this is the real concern, and it's actually gotten worse since the second quarter. So from 2.8 to 2.6, a couple of other threats here: poor sales of vehicles and programs supplied. Clearly looking at EV sales, and we've had a pretty strong run here at the end of September. And yet going forward, there's some concerns, right, about their weakness and then the overall economy as a whole. I guess on the trade side, right, it really is one of these things where again, the agility is really the only way you can kind of manage that. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, control the controllables and place the bets. And I think
Yeah.
that's a lot of what these organizations are trying to do. And sometimes they work out, and there's a lot of my clients I'm noticing that talk to me about kind of this waiting game. How do we like make sure we are reactive, but we don't overreact? And so it makes complete sense that this is really the threats.
Yeah, no, great point. Next slide. If we look at the next one here, I mean, this is unfortunate, but a reality here. We look at indicators. We ask our members, well, how has your company, experienced, what changes have you experienced, if any, on a 12-month basis and on a 1-month basis? And so new orders, down, here, 50 being neutral. So on a 12-month basis, 35, on a 1-month basis, 44. And so it is moving in the right direction, but it's still decidedly negative. And production, similar story, 31 on a 12-month basis, 40 on a 1-month. And then looking at costs, again, 50 being neutral, 89 on a 12-month basis, that measure, and then a 1-month change, 78. So we're in an environment where we're seeing more of the same, where new orders are down, production's down, and costs remain elevated. And this is really, we started the year, with this recognition, okay, it's going to really come down to working to optimize, try and drive efficiencies. And yet here we are. I mean, it's a little bit more of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this one also speaks a lot to consumer impact. So, as the average population gets more uncertain of how do I spend my dollars, what is the security of my long-term financial position, and how sure am I of my job? That's going to impact things like buying new products in cars and how do I make current cars last longer. So I think while we see these new orders in this production piece lagging, hopefully maybe some of that can be seen in the makeup on the service parts and the aftermarket vehicle piece. But certainly, yes, a lot of this consumer confusion is translating to the confidence in people buying new product.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So yeah, here, let's jump into the talent and HR piece. So this is important. We ask a couple of questions. First, we're going to focus on roles and responsibilities versus skills, and then we'll look at culture, organizational culture. So here first, look, there are competitive hiring pressures, of course. And so are you evaluating gaps between roles and responsibilities versus skills in your organization? Well, of course, nearly 90% of respondents indicate, well, yeah, we are. What are the gaps of those? And so there are minor gaps and there are some moderate gaps, sure. And how willing are you to embrace the changes needed to close these? Well, of course, the vast majority really strong. And so this is quite positive. If you go to the next slide here, I think what's important is just this idea that, how do you see this changing? And it's difficult, maybe knowing that, obviously tariffs and what this means for business case and supply chains are changing. But I do think it's interesting. How do you see this changing over the next 1 to 3 years? We actually move from 34% narrowing this gap from 34% to 43%. Expect this gap to narrow. And so that's a positive. And I think, a couple of different points. It's, to some degree, skills and tools. And so it's an interesting, point here. I'd love to get your feedback here on a couple of different comments, right? You mentioned earlier, right, agility. The couple of highlighted points, industry is changing rapidly and needs skills to be agile and flexible. So that certainly echoes your comment. Redefining roles and responsibility. And I would say that's probably something for sure. We're in a state of flux. And so we were racing toward EV. EV is going to be important, but it's also now it looks like it's going to be kind of a parallel path, a wider range of technologies and options. And so that requires different skill sets or broader skill sets. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. I have a few thoughts on this one. So I think it's really encouraging to me to see that organizations are focused on skill. And that is something that seems like a no-brainer, but I would say historically, organizations have gotten wrong. So having a skills-based understanding of people's ability and impact on their work versus just these broad brush, I need a mechanic, I need a technician, no, it's literally what do those skills do, hard skills and soft skills do for the output of those people, and how does it create that opportunity for growth, development, and impact? And so when we see these redefining roles and responsibilities to be more skills centric, it's not the you need this many years experience. It's now I need you to specifically have aptitude for these things in these areas. And what that allows organizations to do is be a lot more focused in the hiring process, but then also be a lot more focused in the talent development and learning world. So if I'm understanding that from a hard skill perspective, training people on data science, training people on I have a lot easier time wrapping my mind around what is curriculum required to get people upskilled in those areas and how do we measure those skill development. Not that hard. The soft skill piece, which has traditionally been deprioritized or there was softer measurement, we're seeing a lot more demand for how do we help our people be more empathetic, be more agile, be a creative thinker, be more innovative. Because to your point, Mike, it's not just can I get widget A to widget B to widget C? It's how do I think about continuous improvement? How do I interact differently with the automation that's being implemented in my job, and how do I actually connect my purpose, which we know many of the younger and newer workforce is craving, to outcomes leveraging digital technologies. So I get asked a lot, and I was in a MEMA panel a couple years ago of how do we help these younger generations come into an industry that's pretty staid. I think it's by focusing on things like this and using the vernacular around skills.
Great insights. It's really strong. And I think too, just to go back, one point, I mean, you mentioned on the training side, so right, training, certainly critical, but then the other thing is you mentioned upskilling as well, and then upskilling in a number of different ways. And so leveraging automation and then also looking at AI and AI among other tools and other, capabilities. So really strong points. Appreciate that. Jocelyn, you're a breath of fresh air. I really appreciate your insights. Thank you so much. What a great contribution to our discussion here today. So thank you. I want to thank Jocelyn Mayfield, Principal, Deloitte Consulting, Automotive and Manufacturing, for her insights here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. It's been a real treat.
Absolutely. We'll look for us next time here on Supplier Insights, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you and take care.